Today's video, we're going to talk about why the conversion data that you have in your PPC account, Google, Bing, Facebook, with Google and Bing being the biggest ones, why that has everything to do with how much money you're going to make with your PPC campaigns. And it's not simply, oh, you got to track your results to know what works and what not works. I'm going way beyond that on this video to the point where if you do this, if you do it all versus what the average person is going to do, you can make 10 to 20 times more money. Long term, having this going for your business, utilizing all of the data that you have available to you and at your disposal to improve your campaigns, and doing it in a way in which the specific algorithms that Google and Facebook has, of course, as well as Bing, can help you make money. They want to help you make money. It's up to you to have them do that for you by having feed in the right data that they can use to get you the most sales, which I'm going to talk about on today's video. So respectively, there's a lot of things that you can do in terms of manual work to improve your results, but there's a lot of stuff that Google and Facebook will do for you on their own that's going to get you better results on a progressive basis. And the great thing about what I'm sharing with you today is once it's set up, for the most part, it's just a small amount, or if you want to, you could totally automate it, no work. The ad algorithm that Facebook and Google has, as well as Bing, will consistently just keep getting you more and more profit, higher ROI on your ads. And they're going to scale your accounts more by doing nothing else, respectively. You can automate this and you can do nothing else, and they'll just keep making you more and more money. That's the holy grail that everybody's looking for. But the question is, do people want to actually go through the effort initially to get things set up to where the automated improving process here that can go into your ad accounts to get it set up, and whether they're willing to do it or not. And the answer is most people aren't. So you can use this information to get a 10 or 20 times X increase in what you're making long term by doing it, because even if they have the idea in their head to do this, they're still going to be apathetic enough to not actually take the information here home and use it for their own campaigns. So it's an opportunity. All of you guys, a lot of my videos, not everybody can use the strategies. This video, everybody can make this work. I promise you. And anybody can actually do this. If you can't personally do it, somebody else can help you, and it's not complicated at all either. To set it up, it's complicated in essence to initially wrap your head around it, but once you understand this, after I explain it to you, executing isn't that difficult. I promise you that. So with all that said, I'll talk about how the quality of the conversion data you have flowing into your account, which we're going to get the most of it in there, explaining what are the different ways of doing it, what's the best way of doing it. That way you can get as much sales increase from what you're doing right now, which you may be doing conversion tracking. If you're not doing conversion tracking, this is going to be a game changer. But even if you are doing some base level conversion tracking, you are tracking some sales, you are tracking some leads, this is going to take things well beyond that as well. So the amount of people who do all of this stuff is like a couple percent of people, 1% of the people. So basically speaking, this works every time. You're going to take either some or all of the data, and you're still going to get a lot more results on what you're doing by learning these methods for your business either way. So anyway, to get started here, more and more of Google and Facebook's machine learning systems are better at finding, or getting better, I should have said, are getting better at finding, one, people more likely to buy on an ongoing basis. So, and if you don't, taking a step back here, machine learning is basically a computer's way of learning on its own. It basically, through trial and error, is a layman's way of saying it. It tries this doesn't work. Tries this doesn't work. Tries this works. Okay, well, let's try to do some stuff with this and see the different variations of this will work. Or, this works, what else will work? And that's machine learning in a nutshell. Google and Facebook for basically 10 years now have predicated and built their systems for their ads, Google ads, Facebook ads, to use this machine learning to figure out how to run their customers' ads, because they know most people don't optimize their ads very well. They don't know, they aren't ad experts, and they wanted to eventually just be able to use their systems to find customers. And even if you aren't an ad expert, you use their systems working for you to do half of the job, because that's what their systems are there for. They're very refined at this stage. They're constantly trying to analyze all of the users that they have on Google, all Google's users, all Facebook's users, also all Bing's users, what all these traits that these people have, so they can figure out all the people, what are the people that buy red shoes on a regular basis, and what traits, what certain set of traits makes a person likely to buy red shoes. They're studying this on a progressive basis and doing that through their machine learning process before you even step up to plate to advertise, because that's their bread and butter of why they can sell their ad cost for as much, or their ads for ad space as much as they can. They're predicting what people are going to do in the future and selling those predictions to you, the advertiser. The other thing they do is they're trying to find more people, more like the people that were more, this is a mouthful. They're trying to find more people that were more like the people that were more likely to buy before. Or in other words, if you didn't catch that, the people that they identified as, after trying out enough, because they monitor every click that you make on Facebook, they monitor every click they make on Google, they monitor every click they make on Bing, to study what are basically the traits that makes a person likely to buy red shoes, given my previous example before. When they find one, now they're trying to figure out, of the traits they discovered that makes a person, of the people that buy red shoes, which they can study that through the conversion tag of other advertisers. That's how they get that data. They combine all the advertisers' purchase data, the have tracking together, and they see somebody who buys red shoes. They're trying to study what made what traits made those specific customers unique, and database that so they can sell it to you if you're selling red shoes. But also they're studying why those traits that the people that seem to have bought in red shoes often had, and distinguish that so they could find other traits that would lead to a purchase of red shoes as well that's not the same, and to basically scale the results of all the data that they have, using the initial data to find out other sources of data that they can use through a progression to find out all the ways that the traits that lead up to a red shoe purchase, so they can combine it all together. So if somebody buys red shoes, it'd be like saying somebody buys red shoes at your store. Why did you buy? And they say, oh, I have a wedding. And so basically, then now you can go after people. If you're going to sell red shoes that are having a wedding, you're more likely to sell if they know they have a wedding coming up than anybody who's looking potentially for red shoes, if you combine those two. So a very rudimentary way to explain what's going on. But essentially, they're constantly learning. They're trying to figure out what's going on to sell those predictions to you, the advertisers. For you to take advantage of it, you will basically be able to tap into all that customer data for common items. If you're starting out and you have a fairly unique item, Facebook, Google, Bing is going to have to kind of learn it on its own. And even though they have all that data on who buys red shoes, respectively, every red shoe is different, so it's not just a copy and paste thing. You're not going to be able to step up and say, I want to sell red shoes just like you sold to all the other advertisers on your network that sells red shoes as well. They will do that, but it won't take you all the way. There'll still be some individual learning when you get a sale, what made that person unique and how that's different than the typical people in the past that sold red shoes, and what, it made them unique, and try to, do all these cross comparisons. With that, so what you do if you're, advertising, your goal is to track whether or not you have some level of goal. You have a goal with your campaign to get a lead. Obviously, ultimately, it's to get a sale, or you're trying to get a shopping cart, somebody to check out through your shopping cart, whatever. You set up a conversion goal to track that activity, and you use that data so that the ad network you're on can study that, Google, Bing, or Facebook. And then with your bidding inside your ad account, if you're using search engine advertising on Google, let's say, there's target CPA and there's target ROAS bidding. That conversion data, if you're tracking leads, you could do target CPA and basically say, Google, now, okay, we got these people who turned into a lead. I want other people that will turn into a lead that are like them, but only pay this much. And of course, target ROAS bidding is, I need to make sure that I'm getting $8 of sales versus $1 of ad spend that I'm paying for it. I'll take all the customers you can. And they look at the people who purchased and all their traits, and then do some learning of what made those people unique to see if that actually will hold true, to find another, if another person has those traits, will they purchase at the same rate at least? And it powers those campaigns. If you're using manual bidding, there's manual CPC bidding with Google and enhanced CPC bidding. I used enhanced CPC bidding because I want to not let the algorithm have so much, the liberation of testing all these things, because the algorithm, as good as it is, it starts out very rough around the edges, and it takes a lot of time to figure out what you need to have. With our clients, I want to get to the start of profitability quicker, because people always want that. And with that, I'll use more of my own logic and intelligence to figure out what we should really stick with initially, and not just try out too much stuff at once, which will, because the algorithm needs a mass amount of data. Computer systems that do machine learning need a mass amount of data. The enhanced CPC bidding, though, I use that because we can adjust what we're willing to pay for a click on each keyword, but beyond that, enhanced CPC bidding looks at all the people who have bought red shoes before, and I'm bidding on buy red shoes as the keyword. They're going to try to use, when somebody, before they see my ad, they study all their past behavior, and if it looks like they're 3 times more likely to buy, they basically charge me 3 times more than my bid, and then to get a sale, because that's basically what enhanced CPC bidding is. In that it allows you to kind of sort of set your bid so it doesn't go too high, but at the same time you're letting Google have a little bit of free range to adjust your bid up if they through their machine learning process understand that person's more likely to purchase, so you don't lose out on those auctions, because the other people with target CPA or ROAS bidding, that's exactly how it works fundamentally, but also they go more, they're more liberal with how much they're willing to charge you for a click, and a lot of times start out very high per click in the beginning, and it'll cost you a lot of money, and you may run out of money before you get into profitability with some of those target CPA and target ROAS, whereas enhanced CPC, you can keep the cost controlled, they won't go too high, and you can get to profitability quicker, even though your overall sales won't be as quick because you're not going as aggressively at it initially. Just wanted to throw that in why I use that. And then there's, for display advertising, I wanted to speak on, Google has similar audiences, which that whole system is predicated on, here's all my, you got my conversion tag, I have a goal set up for when a sale comes through, take a look at all those people, and then find me out on the Google Display Network, which are basically most of the websites that have banner ads on it, are on Google Display Network. Not all, but most of them are. And I want you to find websites that the people that have all the traits that are similar to my customers that I've had in the past are on at the time. And then if they have all those traits, I want my ad to show up for them, because I can probably sell what we have to them. Even though it's not on a website that's even relevant to what I sell, we know because of the user's traits that person's likely to buy from us, and so we'll go after not but by what they're doing at the time, but who they are, and more importantly, what they've done in the past. Facebook has lookalike audiences. That's the same way. It's the same kind of function, if you're wondering how that works. respectively, to go a bit further here, technically, Google, Facebook, if you want to call, say Bing as well, there's millions of data points that these ad networks have on their users. They're tracking everything about all the users that are going on at all time and databasing everything. And basically they ultimately are trying to build up as large a profile on each individual user that they have, so they can make the best predictions about what that person's going to do, so they can sell their advertising for the most money, right? So, and that includes sites that they visited. Why? Because Google Analytics tag is on, most people have Google Analytics on their sites. Google has Google Chrome browser, which is over half of the market share of people who use web browser. They're tracking all that activity. Respectively, Microsoft has, of course, Bing, I should say. Bing has the data on all the PCs that are out there that have Windows on it. Same company, they have all that data. Build up a profile from all the activities you do on your PC. And along those same lines, Facebook always had a partnership with Apple to get data from there. They don't have that anymore, but still Facebook has data on their platform, and they have which has hurt them a lot recently, which is why the ads haven't worked nearly as well since before 2019 or before 2020, if you want to say that. But they watch everything that's going on Google.com, but they also watch any of their apps. They watch all that. And they watch things that you've typed in before on these other apps. I'll tell you, in fact, that like on Skype, which is a Microsoft product, or anything you type on there, Bing uses it to help power their machine learning algorithm. But also, they sell that data to companies like Google, which Google and Facebook both, as well as Bing, buy data from other companies and add it to their own data on their own properties. Anything that you said verbally on those Alexa and all those other products, it's the same thing. Those companies that have data in general, they can sell their data to, if you're big enough or if you're approached, to Facebook, Google, Bing to help them do better analysis of their users. So ultimately, they have this third-party data coming in. So they have all the data about all their users, and every single thing you click on and do and look at and hover over on, you've got basically over time millions of data points on yourself of what they think you're at, what you do, specifically what you do, and then they make assumptions of what you are, who you are based upon that data. But it's not even good enough. They got to be competitive, want to stay competitive, so they buy data from, Google buys data from Microsoft on Skype, because I know if I type stuff on Skype, the ads on Google Display Network show up relevant to what I typed in on Skype. And what you say, specifically when you have a certain app on that has a microphone on it, the Alexas and stuff like that, Google Home device, that all stuff is used. But also, Google, Facebook they do data sharing. I can tell you that for sure. I've monitored and paid attention to the stuff, how data on one platform kind of gets transferred over to the other, and have like a reciprocal type of arrangement. And if you have an app for like monitoring your menstrual cycles for women, that app, if the app is free, as they say, if the product's free, you're the product. They sell that data to Google, and then Google now knows more. You thought you didn't do that much on Google, so they don't know that much about you. But now, because they buy company data from 15,000 different apps, which you may be a user of 3 of those apps. Well, now they got all the data that you had, things you typed in, things you did on those apps. Now Google has that, and they pair the data together to make even better predictions about you and who you are. So anyway, they build up this data profile, and then when you have on your website conversion tracking set up, customer buys or is marked qualified, let's say, or whatever, when a lead comes in, if you're generating leads, that customer then is compared to all the other millions of users that they have and all the data that they've purchased from other people and the data they collected in-house on those people, on that person, should I say, and then now knows because they've saved all that data ahead of time and bought data from other companies and then compiled that with their own data, they can see exactly the one of those millions of traits that they have had stored on that individual user, what they had, so they can go and try to find of the 1,000 things that they now know about you, other people that have the same exact 1,000 things. The more powerful things are what you've typed in on certain apps, or what you have said, what you've recently searched for on Google. But all of this stuff is combined to build up a profile on you and everybody else that they have using their system. The way how they combine data, by the way, is if you use an email to sign into an app, Google uses its own email of what you sign into your Gmail account to pair the data together. They know you're the same person. There's also things like the app mobile ID, which they can get that from even if you have an app, you can get the mobile user ID from the mobile user, and then Google has the same thing when you use a mobile device to get on, on Google, any Google product basically, and they sandwich the data together that way. There's even things I've talked about on other videos, beacons out there, that out in the real world, you venture past a beacon, it picks up your mobile ID, it ties what your GPS location of that beacon, and knows you were at a certain area, so that they can sell that data to these big ad companies, respectively. And everybody knows if you walk around with the mobile device, all your GPS data is used. It's also sold between these companies back and forth. So anyway, I've spoken enough on that. Essentially, what you're trying to do is they have all this data, this monstrous amount of data on people that they know them probably better by now than they know themselves. Your goal is to be able to compile enough customers to give them enough data to see what are the commonalities between all the customers that you have, so that on their network they can find the same people that have the same commonalities, so then to start being able to feed you customers without you having to use your intelligence of knowing what keywords to target, what sites to target, that they just start finding them on your own. And you need so many. Generally speaking, you need thousands before the algorithm gets decently good at finding you new customers at a cheaper rate, as well as just scaling if you're at the cost per sale that you need to be at. So that's just a basic background of how this stuff works and how you get how you make more and more money from PPC if you're excluding anything you can physically do to make a better ad and a better landing page and all that, with the machine learning component of what these ad networks offer on their side, which powers half your results if you're doing a lot of work. The other half kind of comes from the data that you feed them, if you're feeding in data. Now the thing is, to improve your results, all you got to do is improve the amount of data that you're feeding them, or you're tracking. In other words, if you have junk data in, you'll have junk results out. I see a lot of people, they'll try to do conversion tracking. I'll approach different people that we're going to work together, and their goals are set up all wrong. Probably 75% of the time, their goal tracking and their Google or Facebook, it's wrong. And then you ask them why, and they say, oh, I tried to have somebody do that, and they never did it right. It's almost the same thing that they say every time, and then we never did get it right. Well, now, instead of having no data, now you're giving them false data, so they're trying to make assumptions about what to do on wrong information. So it's even worse than having nothing. And when you have tracking set up and it goes wrong because you got, competent or incompetent web developers on your site changing stuff, and now the conversion tracking tag doesn't work the same way as it did before, it starts feeding in wrong data. Now your campaign can go so far off course, by the time you find it, you've poisoned the entire right data set that you were feeding Google to get you all the customers where you're at today, enough where you're basically screwed. Google has had a way to basically exclude data over a certain time frame. People don't know about that. I mean, that's one way to work out of it, but the average person isn't going to know anything about that. And you've spent years potentially to work out to where you had enough customer data for Google to find you, or Facebook to find you a good amount of additional customers at the cost per customer you want, or client that you want. And now you've poisoned the well by having your tracking run wrong for 6 months before you figured it out. And you have to start all over again. And so you spent all that money to basically get to the point where you could start making money, and then you've completely derailed yourself. Respectively, you could set up conversion tracking. Most people know that if you're generating leads, you want to hopefully track a contact form. A lot of times they don't track phone calls coming in, which both is obviously better. Or if you have an e-commerce site, most of the people know they should track their sales, but there's still half of them that don't even track their sales on their ad campaigns. So, but that's just scratching the surface on tracking as far as tracking goes, and the data that Google can use to be able to improve your results, have better insight as to getting insight on the type of people that buy from you, your specific brand of product or your specific signature brand of service, so they can get you more and more of what you ultimately want. Okay, so respectively, you could the type of tracking that you can do, and there's different levels of how quickly the algorithm's going to figure out how to find you better customers. You can track your leads as they come in, phone calls, form fills. You can do that with a call tracking program like CallRail, and just through Google Analytics and Tag Manager, you can do that. If you're an e-commerce site, you can do sales tracking. Okay, so that's the basics of what, if the people are doing tracking, that's 90%. Either they're doing no tracking or they're doing that level of tracking. What you can also do is you can add offline qualifying or sales data. So if you're generating leads, a lead is not a lead is not a lead. So if you're trying to train the algorithm how to find you a customer that you actually want and pays a lot of money and more of them, you're going to be a lot better off if you use this process called offline conversion tracking, which I've made videos about that, and I've got articles on my site about that. But basically, when a lead comes in, you figure out if that lead is qualified or not qualified, and you take this little serial number called a GCLID that's associated with that lead that you grab when the lead comes through, either through the form or through the phone, and you upload that either manually or through an automated means back to Google Ads or to Facebook or to Bing, which they all do it, and tell them that lead was qualified. And you set up a separate goal just for if it's leads qualified or not qualified, and you still have your lead tracking for did a lead come in or not, so that you can start to build up better quality data for the algorithm to work from, basically. Respectively, if you're an e-commerce site, lots of times, if you're selling anything over $100, let's say, people call, and if you do have a virtual terminal where you can take credit cards over the phone, even if it's 10 or 20% of your data, you already have sales tracking through your shopping cart, you can get even better results. Half the value of what you're getting from ads is the information that's going to tell you how to do better with your ads in the future. I.e. how mostly through how the algorithm learns to run your ads. So if they call and then you process their card over the phone, that through offline conversion tracking, you can also post that information back to your Google, Bing, or Facebook ads account. It all works the same way through this unique serial number called Facebook Click ID, Microsoft Click ID, Google Click ID. And then you can see, you not just have some of your sales data now, you have all the sales data, whether they bought offline or online. Okay? Respectively, going further with the e-commerce, if you sell a product, the value of a customer on their initial sale in a lot of business doesn't tell you very much either. You got to know what that customer's worth over all their purchases, right? And respectively, you can do that to some degree, and you can feed that data in, which I'll get to in a moment. But so as you can see, there's different levels to this stuff. With that said, updating conversion data after the lead is generated will get you to the super, level in terms of maximizing how quickly Google's going to find you cheaper customers and more of them. You can, if you're generating leads, why instead of just giving Google or Facebook or Bing the information about if your lead was qualified when it came in or not qualified, why don't you feed in there if they actually, did the lead turn into a sale or not? Which most of the time, like business to business sales, we call that a deal, one deal, yes or no. But you feed in there, did it result in a sale or no? And you have a specific goal just set up for that. Why? Because we can eventually, once we get enough people through the system and enough people that actually buy it, we can have the algorithm run off of the actual whether or not someone's bought it, yes or no, as a data point to get us more customers, which is going to be a lot more accurate than knowing and using data to cross-compare their users versus your users that were simply marked as qualified or not qualified, or even going back before that, they either called or didn't call or filled out the form or didn't fill out the form. Going a step further, you can have, if that lead comes in, you can have information ported in. If that deal or that opportunity, if you want to call it that, not just did it turn into a sale or not turn into a sale, but what was the contract value? Can you estimate what the contract value is? Can you estimate what the contract is? Can you estimate what the contract was, or can you predict in some way, project it out what that lifetime value of that deal is going to be worth? Lifetime value is going to be better than what the initial contract is. If you presume, what I'll actually do is I'll look at the average amount of lifetime value from somebody who initially signs up as a client or whatever, and then I know they're going to stay for 2 years. So instead of looking at the first year's revenue, I'll look at the second year. And when I go ahead and import through the offline conversion tracking, the revenue that I'm predicted for that customer, I'm getting more information that tells me even better how to optimize our ads, even yet, we'll just say. Specifically being, if you send in the same information, just to clarify, if you send in the same revenue information all the time, that wouldn't help you. But if you can break it down into categories, this person's, A or B or C customers here or clients here, A clients usually spend, instead of not just looking at the contract value initially, they usually go on 3 years. B client usually go on 7 years. C client usually go on only 1 year. And then you can estimate that out, and if you can then differentiate on your side what that customer is likely to be worth, you can send that data and you'll have even better results from the machine learning process, being able to, eventually your goal is to have the machine learning take over and just, it'll be working on its own to get you better customers and clients. Going further here, a lot of times people can't import the estimated contract value. I get that a lot when working with clients, what that person's going to be worth, so to say. And it takes more than 90 days to have the average person purchase, because it's a big deal, right? Because actually, just to let you know up front, with Google and Bing and Facebook, they only give you so much data, or so much, time to tell them if that person turned into a sale or not and how much they spent. And it's around 90 days, okay? With that said, if your average lead that you have come in you don't know if they turn into a sale or don't turn into a sale within 90 days, what you can do, instead of just saying, okay, well, I can't import my sales data, what I can do instead of just telling Google, Bing, Facebook that the lead was qualified or not qualified as a tool to get me better quality leads all the time, I can score the lead, and not just saying if it's qualified, but also because with the conversion goal that you set up will let you have a yes or no property to it, and also the value. And so if you say this was a qualified lead, I'm importing that, but you also as the value tie in the lead score between 1 and 10 or whatever, then over time, the algorithm can start pushing you not just more qualified leads, but more qualified leads that were towards the top end of the scale of the qualified leads you get. So you can see how we're getting more and more precise here, how things would work. And you're weeding out more and more and more the people that you don't want, so that the algorithm knows if you get anybody with these traits, we're money. And it'll make less mistakes and have to go through less trial and error to find you the pile of customers that's laying in there, if it just had enough data to know who those customers were, you would be crushing it already. You also can do a lead score that regularly updates the value. So here, you only have 90 days to tell Google, Bing, Facebook that that lead turned into a sale. But initially, when you initially talk to them on the phone or call them up from the form fill that they filled in right away, you can say if that lead was qualified or not qualified and what the lead score was between 1 and 10, like I just told you. Maybe they were a 10 lead right away, but you find 30 days into the process working with them that really they're only a 5. These networks let you update the value before that 90 days is up. So you can have a system worked in there to where you start out with the score and you import it, but if you find out along the way that it's a bad lead, you update the score. Or maybe you just don't, respectively, if you can't update this, just wait 90 days and update it at the end, because the 90 days is the maximum amount of time you get from the time that the person initially clicks on your ad and gets to your site to the time you can tell Google about that lead, how it went. And a lot of times people will get to the site and they'll wait a month before they even call you. And so therefore you really only have 60 days from the time they called you to get the data back to Google. So the most ideal system that you would have is you would tell Google if you're assuming that the person doesn't often enough purchase within 90 days, you tell Google right away this is a qualified lead or not qualified, but if it's and then what the lead score is, and then anytime within the allowable time frame that's left, that lead score ends up drastically changing or just changing it all, you would tell Google, Bing, or Facebook that lead score is actually, you would want to actually tell Google, Bing, or Facebook how the situation with that lead ended up, and use that 90-day time span, whatever amount of time that you have left, to your fullest advantage to set this story straight with that particular lead, so you have the even more accurate or the most accurate data possible that you can get. The lead score in and itself is, even if you normally do get, let's say 50% or more of your leads actually buy within 90 days, the lead score, you can do that in the meantime because you can get the information about, usually you need about 1,000 conversions to be able to have enough data for the algorithm to really make use of what you have. And so you'll have more qualified leads or leads come in than you have sales. So you can optimize and you let the algorithm that Google, Face, and Bing have to optimize based upon if the lead's qualified or not before it starts optimizing on whether or not the sale was generated or not, and specifically how much. With the sale, if you're doing lead generation, you import the sale that occurred with that lead eventually and how much they spent. And with that, the summary of all this is whether you're doing lead generation initially or you're selling a product and you have a shopping cart, you want all sales from all customers fed in to Google, Bing, or Facebook that says that they bought and how much they spent. And with that, then you will have the most ideal situation for Google, Facebook, and Bing to get you the most results they can get with their algorithm and customer matching system as possible. With that, if you have people that are going to buy more than once, you try to predict how much they're going to buy in the future, and you try to use that as in some way to change the value that you're importing with your customer sale to give you even more accurate data to have an even better result with the machine learning process that Google, Bing, and Facebook has. That all said, the goal is to start out with, as I touched on just a minute ago, the less info and switch over to the best possible metric at the time. So what you're going to have, you can start, if you want to take all my advice and you want to be in the range of being the 10 to 20 times more class, you set up, if you're doing cart sales, you set up tracking so you know if someone purchased through the cart. You can do that through Google Analytics and then import those goals into Google Ads or set it up through Google Ads specifically. I recommend for actually cart sales doing the Google Ads conversion tag itself within the native Google Ads interface, because it's a little bit more, captures more of the sales actually. But that's specifically when you're talking for e-commerce companies. And but you'll set up those sales. If you have any sales that occur offline where you take the credit card over the phone, you get that set up. And with that, if you're just selling, a product, then you use the sales that you're getting through the entire system, and you pretty much, it's a much shorter process. If you're doing lead generation, and more specifically what I'm trying to get to here, you are going to track whether or not they're a lead or not, or did they call or did they fill out the form. You have a goal for that. You have a goal that says whether or not the lead's qualified or not. You have another goal that says whether or not the goal or the qualified lead that you had, did it turn into a sale or not specifically. And on your goal for qualified or not, you have the lead score, and on the goal for, did they turn into a sale or not, the amount that they spent or the predicted amount they spent, respectively. And because you need 1,000 conversions at least generally to have the algorithm do a half decent job, because that's kind of how it works. You'll start out by having them use the lead data, and you mark that goal as a primary goal inside Google Ads specifically, as well as to try to do that on Bing and on Facebook. Once you have 1,000 conversions under the qualified goal, basically 1,000 that you specifically have had qualified, you'll have that marked as the primary goal. And when you have 1,000 sales, you'll have that marked as the primary goal, in terms of that way the algorithm knows, I'm going to start optimizing using this goals data now, not the previous ones. And so that you don't have to wait till you have 1,000 sales to start taking advantage of the system. That way you'll be profitable quicker. And the more accurate the data, the more it actually knows and weeds out. And what it's about is weeding out all the false data to get you the actual customers you want, not the customers you want, but there's also people in there that you don't want, and it gets the algorithm is going to get confused, more confused, and the more accurate the data, the better a job it's going to do by far. And so anyway, that's what I mean by switch over to the best possible metric at the time, particularly for the lead generation companies out there. If you are the regular e-commerce company, I'd start out with regular sales tracking. And then if there's a way to predict what the lifetime value of a customer is, I would try to have something in there that can automatically, it would have to be done dynamically for it to be feasible, that the value of the sale includes lifetime value, that you're piping that in there. I don't usually get into that, but that will make it even more, the algorithm work even better for you, given it knows if they bought this, because here's the thing, if they bought item A, let's say you're a health shop, it was a real case study. They bought protein powder of this brand, they usually go on to buy 8 different proteins in the future. If they buy brand B protein powder, they usually buy 2 or 3. So you know specifically this person's worth 3 times as much, even though they spent about the same on the initial purchase. And so you could have a script that will simply, once the item from category C is purchased, it automatically sends the conversion value that you have tied to that specific user, which is all identified by the Google Click ID. You tell Google, this Google Click ID, this person actually is going to be worth this amount overall, given what I know about that customer of that type. So update the sale amount, that what you saw in the cart, to this much more, so it shows. And then you can get into lifetime value instead of just value on the initial purchase, that's going to give you a bigger result about them finding you, not just not customers, and not just customers who get you a 8-to-1 return, but on the initial purchase, but customers that get you an 8-to-1 return on all their purchases roughly, which with that, you're going to find a lot more customers that way, because in terms of Google or Facebook or Bing finding you customers, it'll be able to find you more that are qualified if you have wider standards. And by knowing the lifetime value of a customer, knowing that you have to have an $8 return for every $1 of ad spend, you'll give it a wider breadth for them to find you, the people that you want. And at the same time, you're giving them the data to weeding out more of the people that aren't going to get you there, and getting into a smaller subgroup, which has the really big whales that you want. And you can have them work on finding you the whales versus the mixture of customers that you would normally have. So anyway, that all said, I wanted to give you a few other tips to make sure that these ad networks are going to be working for you and progressively getting you more and more customers all the time. If you do what I told you already, you're going to be in the top couple percent of the advertisers out there already, just having done what I told you already, respectively, or top 1%. Going back to the start of the video, I mentioned that it's really a tentative situation where if your goals break, you have this system going on, you can really basically destroy all your momentum and your results you were getting with your campaigns, that where it was finding customers and then figuring something out and then finding you a little bit more customers and then using that little bit more data to find you even more customers and then even more, and that's how it should go. If your goal tracking breaks, you're not going to know it for a while. Now you're feeding in a bunch of data. It's just like going back from having the sales data and optimizing off that and going back to optimizing on lead data, or did they actually call or not, versus having proof that that person bought, not just called. So it's about the cleanliness of the data that you have, and the algorithm has to be able to actually identify what makes the biggest and best customers you actually want unique, so they can help you find more of them and not have to guess so much to ultimately figure it out. And if your data is too muddy, it's never going to really figure it out. But if you get the data down to the brass tacks of exactly who you want, they will almost for sure find you the exact customers, the size of customers that you want, that are super profitable to just your business. You just got to set them up to be able to do it. What I'll do to make sure, going through and setting up this tracking mechanism initially to get this working for your business is one thing. The other thing is maintaining it so that doesn't happen to you. What I just said doesn't happen to you. First thing I always do is I set a goal definition document up to document everything that we're tracking. This is something nobody does. Get yourself a Word document and actually take screenshots on your site of everything you're tracking. Every phone number, every form that you're tracking. Then document how you're importing any sales that occur offline through the phone or through the form leads that come in. So how you get that back in there. And then if you go to the extra final step I gave you, where you're actually trying to predict the lifetime value of a customer, then respectively, or if there's multiple layers to your process, where you're tracking leads and then qualified leads and then sales, you document all that stuff and how you're feeding the data back into your ad accounts, and you have documented for every ad network of the Google, Bing, Facebook that you're on, so that you can hand that off to an employee, and they can go through once a month and know exactly what goals they have to test, and they'll physically test them. They're going to physically call every phone number that's unique. They're going to track and make sure the conversion shows up in Google Analytics or Facebook or whatever. Or on Facebook, and every goal is tracked. If you are tracking the offline sales, you actually are going to take, and you're going to go through the system, and you're actually going to import and try to make sure the goals that are dedicated for offline sales that you're importing into the system also works. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is you're going to weed out the automated goals. So one thing big with Google lately is they're trying to, because of everything I told you here and their goals, and they know how much it matters to have data for them to, because their algorithm, literally speaking, can do way more than you think it can. They put their own conversion goals in there, and that will muddy up your data if you are doing it the right way. Whereas most people, like I said, they tried it once or twice, it was set up wrong, and then that's all they got. And that's what because most people do that, they're counting on it. Most people, or let's just say we're putting everybody in the same box, they're trying to put their own goals in there, tracking it their own way if somebody becomes a lead or becomes a sell. Through their own mechanisms when you have Google Analytics on the site, or they have Chrome browser, they can kind of piece things together. And so you document every single goal you have, how to test it, how it works. Once a month, they document it, they sign off on it, they put it on a database saying they tracked every single one, they took screenshots showing the lead come in and that the goal triggered on Google Analytics or Google Ads or Facebook or Bing. And then they made sure no new goals were there, and they deleted them there if there were. That's your hygiene part of the process. So that's just as importantly as getting this mechanism set up. And then, of course, if you have your offline sales that you got to import online, you got to have a dedicated, trusted person that can do that for you. I find more success manually importing, by the way, instead of through automated means. Have data from a spreadsheet, post data into our ad systems. It's less glitchy. So if you want the best results, I would recommend manually uploading it. But technically you could do either, and if you're really advanced, you probably can actually set it up. So basically the CRM, when you get a sale, Salesforce and like Zoho CRM kind of do this. When you have a sale, you get to mark a deal 1. That posts data to your Google Ads account or these other ad accounts, or through something like Zapier, you can import all that data into your ad accounts in real time, so you don't have to touch a thing. You can actually do that. That said, your sites, you have people working on your sites on a regular basis, which everybody does. The tracking will get broke at some point. You can't try to set it up and leave it. You have to regularly, just like your site breaks eventually, or sometimes, your tracking will break. You got to constantly test it to make sure it works, so that the maximum amount of time it will be broken will be a month, so you don't poison the data set that you have and the momentum you have of Google or Bing or Facebook consistently getting you more customers. And with that, I believe that's pretty much all I wanted to cover as far as what you do, how you do it, and I had one more idea, but I think I forgot what I was going to say. That all said, that's how the system works. As we move forward into the future, 10 years from now, this is going to be even more important. And the people who do what I told you to do and are striving to make sure their data is more and more accurate, or as accurate as possible, and they're testing their systems all the time to maintain those systems, are going to be the ones who are going to win long term. That's why I say you're going to make 10 to 20 times more long term. That's assuming nothing else changes, but it's going to get more and more automated. Why? Because their algorithm's going to get better on each of these networks, and they're going to do a better job at it. And so you, being the one that has all the data feeding in the right way, you're naturally going to be, it's going to work even better and better. So you have more data coming in. The more you spend on ads, the more data you have, the better their algorithm gets all the time. You're going to get more results because of that. So you combine those two. I mean, if you just do what I mentioned here, the end result, at the end of the day, as long as you have some basic knowledge about how to set up the ads the right way, you should be the winner in your space long term. Keeping this up for your business. I'm not embellishing about that. This is the way that it's going long term. That said, hope you enjoyed the video. I have a lot of other videos on this channel about other PPC money-making strategies. If you want to learn a lot about PPC, I highly recommend you check out my other videos. I have a blog at guaranteedppc.com/blog with step-by-step instructions on how I build campaigns that are meant to guarantee results for our clients here. If you want to see information along those lines, you can find it there. If you have any questions about machine learning, how these ad networks use machine learning, how to set up tracking, I've done all this stuff dozens of times, let me know down in the comments. I get back to every single person who leaves me a comment on this channel, usually within a day or two. And that all said, I'll wrap it up with that. I do hope I see you on my next video that comes out in another day or two, where I'll have another great PPC strategy or topic that I'm covering. Make you more money with your PPC campaigns, regardless of where you're advertising at or what you do. It'll be useful to you in some way. Thank you.